Hey everybody, welcome to the Leadership Syllabus. I'm your series host and leadership performance coach, John Jaramillo. The Leadership Syllabus Podcast provides insights from leaders on the main leadership lesson they've learned from their work, life, and experiences and who they are as a person. Each 30-minute mod will capture a bit about who the guest is, their work, and the one lesson they would contribute to the Leadership Syllabus. This collection of mods will offer you a one-series stop of real-world and life lessons to enhance your own self-understanding, awareness, and effectiveness in leadership and life. And my guest today is Nancy Berger, and Nancy's a dynamic speaker who empowers audiences to fulfill their full potential by reframing limiting beliefs. Renowned for her engaging, straightforward style, Nancy blends storytelling, humor, and clear communication to captivate and inspire. By challenging audiences to rethink the way they think, she fosters transformative shifts in mindset while delivering an impactful and memorable experience. And I had Nancy on the Book Leads, Impactful Books for Life and Leadership, my other podcast, back in August of 2023. That was episode 63. And we talked about the book, Tracking Wonder, Reclaiming a Life of Meaning and Possibility in a World Obsessed with Productivity by Jeffrey Davis. And how Nancy came to be on this series, I think she kind of got caught in the crossfire where I was talking to her when I was coming up with this idea. I knew she was a great conversation. I know she contributes a lot to her business community, her work community, coaching community. So I asked her, when I get this thing out there, would you be game? And she was game right away. And again, I think this was maybe early last year. Finally getting around to it. Here we are, the first episode. So Nancy, thank you for coming on again and joining me in this new experiment we have going on right now.
It's always a great conversation with you, John. Honored to be here.
I appreciate that. So let's start off with, how would you describe yourself, Nancy? Who are you as a person? Because we're both in the leadership and coaching realm. You don't have to get too personal, but I'm always curious how somebody would describe themselves outside of it can blend into their professional capacity, but how would you describe yourself as a person?
A curious work in progress is how I would describe myself. You want me to tell you a little bit about why?
Sure.
So my journey to my work and my philosophy and my thesis on life in general is that when we can become more aware of ourselves and curious about why we think the way we think, we can create the reality that we want. And that sounds pretty lofty, but I did it for myself after a lot of grueling work. And that's what brought me to bringing these strategies to other people, because it's pretty game changing.
What was the game changer for you? What was it that triggered you into that kind of self-awareness, self-assessment, and kind of intentionally designing who you were to be? What was it that kind of put that into motion for you?
I cracked up my car after drinking too much, and I narrowly missed a DUI arrest. And the officer said to me, I don't think this is who you are. In that moment, I started to question who I thought I was. And that was 20 years ago. But that was a moment. Young children, member of the community, I cracked up my Dodge minivan because I lost sight. I didn't know who I was, and I was afraid of everything. And it was a gift that got me to start questioning a lot of things. And once I could figure out the thought patterns and beliefs that were holding me back, I changed them, and I changed everything.
It's incredible from our last conversation and other conversations I've had with guests on the other series. There's no track history in this series because obviously you're the first guest, but there is a common theme for people that are doing amazing work and really infusing who they are into their work, that it comes out of sometimes tragedy, hardship, obstacles. So it's incredible that people can take away lessons from those experiences, as adverse as they are, and change the world with it.
Yeah, and
it's just a theme that's there. I mean, the people that are doing mind-changing, world-changing work, well, mind-changing too, mindset, mind shift.
Yeah.
Sometimes most of those come out of these kind of hardships.
And what that tells you, John, is something really important that sometimes can get lost in it. That the people that just make the choice to reframe that tragedy, difficulty, challenge as a springboard with curiosity, with, we're not heroes. We're just sharing the story that brought us shame, but that shame, I'm speaking from my own personal experience, that shame catapulted me into, okay, well, let's do it differently, man, because you can keep doing it the same way and you'll get the same result. So I think the more we share these stories, the better it is, because other people don't feel alone and they're like, okay, I can do that too.
I like hearing about people's shame. Like, the sentence itself sounds ridiculous, but when they frame it in such a way that it's a lesson, it's amazing how I've heard from people, this is what has given me shame, this is what has made me feel shameful in my life, these are the things, I'm pulling back the curtain on who I was.
Yep.
Only because, for me, speaking about why I appreciate those things, because when you really show people as much as you can about who you are, there's no facade, there's no castle built on sand. You're showing everything you are, and you can build from there. So there's no soapbox. There's none of that. You're really seeing who the person is, and they can use their energy to really move forward instead of trying to, keep all the plates spinning, if you will.
Yeah, but you're always, and the word is overused, but I'm going to use it. You're always authentic, John. Like, in our other conversations, I remember this about you. You're just authentic. You just lay it all out there, and you don't get wrapped up in, like, who thinks what about what. We're not all that gifted in that space. And I can tell you, I've been in a coach and speaker and whatever for 7-8 years. I launched my consultancy, after I got my act together. And I wasn't so forthwith in, like, sharing the story, the origin story, all that stuff. It's only in the last few years that I got comfortable sharing more of myself. Yeah. So I really appreciate your comment, because I think it empowers us when we hear other people's stories, but they have to be real. You have to be real.
Yeah.
You can't.
Absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely, because what I've said some stuff on here where I'm like, okay, I never thought I'd ever say that to anybody, right? I'd never share that with anybody. And it's not because my family or my friends are worthy of me sharing. It's just kind of like, it doesn't come up in everyday life, or it wasn't called for, however you want to look at it. But then in these conversations, if the person was sharing, it's like, I kind of reciprocate, because you're in that moment. You're really designing a moment, designing a conversation. And in terms of my authenticity, it's kind of like, it's the same kind of thing, where holding back, trying to keep a facade that everything's... I told you before we started recording this is the first one. We'll see what happens. Yeah. I've found, in terms of, just quickly, in terms of my life, the more that I try to hold everything up as it's fully in control, like, it just takes energy away from everything else.
Yes.
That when you kind of free yourself of that and say, listen, I'm trying the best that I can, I'm doing the best that I can, it allows you kind of to play and experiment, and you can breathe a little more freely. As somebody with anxiety, you can breathe a little more freely, where it's like, okay, there's nothing that I'm trying to kind of craft for somebody. It's just kind of, let's see what happens with life.
Let's see and when we talk about leadership, like, all the things we're talking about are critically important for leadership. There is no, this is who I am at home, this is who I am at work. It just, that doesn't work. So
absolutely.
Within the context of leadership, can you imagine leaders walking into team huddles and saying, I just made such a mistake, and I'm going to share it with you, because maybe we can all learn something, or you guys can avoid making the same mistake. Can you imagine how great you would feel if your leader showed up that way every day?
Yeah.
Just cut in a vein, this vulnerability, it builds trust. Anybody who knows Patrick Lencioni's work, trust. It's the pillar of any team, and it's a sign of strong leadership.
Yeah, for me, it's always been, if somebody could say that, it means we're not going to spend days, weeks, and months with them trying to pretend they can handle everything, like they're Atlas with the world on their shoulders. They're telling me from the get-go, okay, let's work together. They're not trying to keep up appearances for however long it may be, and we're kind of directionless because they don't know what's going on later. No, from the get-go, they're saying, here's where I stand, here's my foundation, let's go.
Yeah.
Nancy,
and
go ahead.
I just want to say one more thing about that.
Sure.
when we talk about leadership and all this stuff, sometimes it's like, I don't know if this is true, but I see it in audiences' faces sometimes, or in workshops that I'm facilitating, like, yeah, this all sounds really good, but like, we're all trying to do a job here and make a buck. So what is that? But the companies that do this kind of thing, the leaders that really embody this stuff, their teams perform better. The companies perform, the bottom line is better. Like, this is not just, you and me, John, talking about, unicorns and cotton candy. Like, this is real, and it has a real impact on organizations.
Yeah, it's incredible. So Nancy, can you share a bit about your work, the services you offer, how it is you work with your clients, what it is you offer them?
Sure. I am a keynote speaker, so I get on stages and spread the message of the power of thought transformation for companies and teams to improve performance and improve culture. I'm also an executive coach, so I work privately with senior leaders, C-suite leaders on developmental goals on how to change behavior, how to change the perception that is held by their stakeholders. I don't sit with leaders and chat about the trouble they're having and we just have a nice chat and I go home. We work on how to change the perception that's held. And I do workshop facilitations and trainings on communication strategies, culture, navigating change with resilience, how to improve digital communication, how to untangle knots that develop in team dynamics, things like that. So those are kind of my major service offerings.
So it's always interesting to go into a project, that first podcast I did, thinking you have the lay of the land, what you want to share with people, and then learning in that process, like, okay, now I can look at it differently. These are things that I haven't seen, an ongoing process of learning. What has your work taught you overall and in general? What have you taken away? What has stood out the most? What have you learned from what you've been doing with your company?
That's a great question. And I think I would say the overarching message and experience that I've kind of gotten through my work is that a lot of people are suffering. They're suffering at their own hand. A lot of people, leaders, contributors, CEOs, across the board, from mid-level to the people that I work with, when you sit with them for more than 10 minutes, you'll get a story about, well, when I was a kid, or I was raised in a family that, or, something like that. If I walked into the room and said, I really want to know about your early life so that I can get a little bit of an insight on who you are, I would get pushback often, especially for senior leaders or people that are really successful at what they do, financial planners, for example, whatever. Oh, we're not going to talk. Yeah, no, I've read your stuff, your blog. Yeah, we're not going to talk about that. Okay, no problem. But then 20 minutes in, well, in my house, the way I was raised, okay. Yeah. So there we are. So, and when I say suffering, I don't mean that everybody's had a terrible life. Of course not. Yeah. We all have a mixture of wonderful memories, difficult memories, great family experiences, all of that. But the negative stuff sticks with us because that's how humans are wired. This is just science. And I have learned in my work that people struggle and sometimes they just don't even know what they're struggling with. And with a little bit of work and a little bit of reflection, we can get to that without psychoanalyzing anybody. I'm not a therapist, but we can get to some of the thought patterns that are hanging them up, keeping them stuck, and that can change their experience in a big way.
So the next question is, what's the biggest lesson you've learned, whether work or from your life, that applies to leadership? I heard you answer some of that in the previous question, but is there any additional examples you want to give, or is there anything you want to add specifically to leadership?
Yeah. Be real and open and honest about mistakes and failures. If there's one thing, it'd be like, celebrate the failures. I remember hearing a podcast and talking about Jeff Bezos years ago and how he would say to his people at Amazon, you're not failing enough, fail more. because that's where all the good stuff comes, the lessons, the innovation, the collaboration. It comes from failures. They are not setbacks. They are a way forward and a way to, change things if you look at them that way.
Yeah. Nancy, when did you start looking at it that way, failure? Just because you see it written about all the time, failure is not what we think it is. It's an opportunity, or it's this or it's that, like it's a starting point. Whatever way we've seen it written about, don't look at it as the traditional idea of failure. Look at it and consider it as this. It's almost like a trope. It's almost like a cliche, but it is true for most of us that have kind of grinded through things not working out. I don't even look at it as failure. For me, the word failure harkens back to school.
Yeah.
Like when something didn't work out and they're like, oh, you failed.
You failed.
And
Yeah.
I'm not being a cliche. I'm trying not to be a trope. I'm not, it's not toxic positivity.
No.
But when you get to that point where you realize, listen, we're all going through life at the same time. We're all trying to experiment and get a little better. I haven't seen failure as failure in years. I think it ties into when I started coaching, where you're kind of like, okay, what makes something a failure? Who's really going to judge it that it's a failure?
Yeah.
Is it insecurity on my part that somebody else is going to judge? Like, what makes something a failure? So for you, when did you become comfortable with that idea of something not working out? I don't want to call it failure anymore, but something not working out where in the past it might have broken you, but now you're like, okay, it didn't work out. Let me go back to the drawing board, or I can experiment again, or I can call in friends for help or colleagues. When did that change for you?
It was an internal process. So I could say, oh, well, the car accident, that was or my divorce after 27 years, that was a bummer. That was hard. It wasn't a thing that happened. It was a change I created on the inside by taking a look at why I thought the way I thought about things, reframing those thoughts. So to your point, not really calling it a failure anymore, saying, oh, look at all the information I just got. That's curious. Let me be curious about that. And I would challenge people, especially young people who are struggling, to take a look at the things in your life that didn't go the way you thought, and look at what came out of that. Because very often we gloss over the gifts in those challenges. But when you get a little bit of the rug pulled out from under you, sometimes there's some cool stuff that you can find out about yourself. And for me, I started to dig into why I knee-jerked to these negative self-judging thoughts. I was so critical of myself. Once I started to understand that there are a lot of parts to people, we all have a lot of parts. And this is supported in psychology and different family system work. There's a lot of different parts to us, and some parts may make better choices than others at times. I remember sitting with my son at one point as an adult when I was sharing with him the mess-ups that I had made, because I think it's important to do that.
Absolutely.
And he said, Mom, good people make bad choices sometimes. And that was a critical moment, not only of parenting, but of learning for me. Like, there's different parts. And yeah, some of my parts kind of got a little wonky there for a while. But once I could understand why that was and reframe my thoughts around it and really start to be kinder to myself, not to give myself an excuse for bad behavior, no, but to say, where did all these thought patterns come from? What's fueling them? And are they based on fact, or am I just making up narratives that I'm living by and it's not serving me?
Yeah, I just thought about that recently along those lines where, again, something that's mentioned more and more these days, giving yourself grace. And it's not to excuse what you've done, but if you're doing the best you can, if you're doing your due diligence, even if you do make mistakes, giving yourself that grace, as long as you try to learn from it and not just believe that I'm going to give myself grace and just keep making excuses over and over again, or not taking your life or your work or your career seriously. As long as you're trying to work in that right direction, giving yourself that grace that we are all humans. We're not all perfect. And getting to that point where you can kind of say, okay, I just need to give myself space take that pressure off. And I love how you highlighted that this is a message, especially important for the younger generations.
Yes.
Because
Yeah,
they're just
really
growing up in something different, completely different than you or I ever grew up in. So I think that is an important message for them to begin seeing it at that point and find partners or mentors or a community that doesn't think the same specifically, but thinks the same way in terms of how they can experiment and learn. And it's a safe environment for learning, not somebody that's just going to criticize you for the sake of criticizing without growth.
Yeah, exactly. I think young people, I mentor young people. It's something that I do to give back. I think it's very fulfilling for me, and hopefully it's helping. But the things I hear is some concerning trends and, anxiety and just like the whole how many likes am I getting generation. And and they're trying so hard to kind of acclimate to their adult world. But can you imagine if, at the level of college or in high school, they started to get some leadership training about be vulnerable, like embrace your setbacks, but that's another conversation for another day.
I think we brought it up in our last conversation in the other podcast. I know I brought it up in other conversations with other guests where it's kind of like school obviously is important, education is important, but there's certain skills that they're not being taught that they should be taught, because you can prepare them in all these subjects for 8 years or high school years, college years, whatever. But if you're not giving them those skills to not cope with life but live with life, kind of the things that we talk about here, all the things that we talk about leadership are applicable to whoever it may be.
Everybody can be a leader, right?
Everybody can be a leader, a self-leader. So all the lessons that we talk about across these podcasts, these apply to life as well. That's why I call the other series Life and Leadership, Impactful Books for Life and Leadership. So many of those lessons transfer over from one to the next. Totally. So Nancy, for this mod, we're calling it Thought Transformation. Can you provide some steps for consideration for those who are listening, those who are watching, even if younger people are watching, those lessons are applicable across the spectrum of life. Can you give people some action steps to consider in terms of thought transformation so that it's effective for them, so they can start working in that right direction?
Yeah, I'm going to keep it pretty high level because I don't want to get in the weeds on this. But
Absolutely.
Let's start here. I would challenge people to notice the thoughts that flood their brain when they wake up in the morning and open their eyes. The first part of their day when they look in the mirror and they're running their list, what words are in your brain in that moment? Know that every day we have about 6,000 thoughts that go through our brain. Know that of those, the lion's share are negative. And there's a reason for that from human evolution. We are wired to remember negative stuff more, so we protect ourselves. Okay, 6,000 thoughts a day. The lion's share of them are negative and repetitive. So notice the thoughts you have about yourself when you wake up in the morning, look in the mirror, think about your day. Oh, what was I thinking when I put this on? Oh, my hair looks bad. Oh, I got to have this meeting, and I'm never going to get that promotion. Notice the words, because the words matter a lot. And change them. If they're not serving you, change the words and practice those, because your brain is like a bicep, man. What you practice gets stronger. And the words that you think turn into your thought patterns that fuel your self-esteem or drain it. It's your choice. But if you start practicing the better thoughts, a lot of people think this is just like, I don't know, toxic positivity or woo-woo or whatever. It's science. You are building neural pathways in your brain. The more you think that way, the more you will think that way. It will become a default. Choose your default carefully and see how you feel. It changes things. That's just one easy step that people, maybe it's not easy, but it's simple. People can start to notice a little bit of their inner dialogue, and they can start changing it. And then a lot of other things can start to change. And I teach these strategies because it's just a matter of practice, consistency, and then you change things. I did it for myself. I'm not asking anybody to do anything I haven't done for myself.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we don't have, I think so much of life is again, those formative years in school, getting the grades, working hard, they're on school teams or sports teams, getting the goals or practicing. But what's incredible is we're not really taught to really talk to ourselves. And this has come up on the other podcast as well, where it sounds simple, but when you're looking at me, I'm looking at you, we see each other on screen, we see ourselves on screen. But when you're talking to somebody, you don't see yourself until you're brushing your teeth in the mirror.
Right.
You know what I mean? So there's something about seeing yourself. There's something about talking to yourself that we haven't gotten accustomed to, that we haven't really taken on. So I think that's it. I've done it little by little, not a lot. Maybe I should do it more. But I do believe that the more we hear ourselves telling ourselves certain things, to think differently, to stop the bullshit that's automatically programmed into our record that's always spinning. It's incredible to stop yourself and say, okay, I gotta think something else. I gotta go in a different direction. I know where this one leads. So there is power to really talking to yourself. I don't think we do it enough. I think we just grit our teeth and just try to get done what is the goal of the moment or the responsibility or the duty.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's meta thinking, metacognition. It's not something we're terribly good at. We can practice it. But can I give a quick, practical example of how this works?
Sure.
Do we have time? Okay.
Yep.
So imagine you're, say, an senior HR leader, executive. And you are about to go into a conference room to deliver the results of an employee engagement and culture study. And the data isn't great. The results of the report isn't great news. And you have to go in, and all the senior lead, the ELT is filing into the conference room, and you're about to deliver this news, and you're, oh God, I hope this goes well. And you're sheepish, and you feel kind of closed, and you're nervous about telling them this bad news and all this stuff. That is the version of you they will get. That changes your whole thing. Your whole vibe, your energy, everything. What you bring into the room, that's what they're going to get. Now, flip the script. You say to yourself inside, I have valuable information. We administered this study. We got the data that's going to help us change our culture so we can increase employee engagement. This is valuable information. They're going to appreciate knowing it, and I'm so glad I can give this to them. That's the version of you they will get. So we're not talking about hocus pocus stuff here. We're talking about the words in your head, fuel the thoughts that you have, which fuel your whole thing, at how you show up at home, at work, everywhere. And so choose carefully.
Yeah, I think we need to talk more, not here, but just in general as a society, understanding our primitive minds versus who we are now, what we need now. Nancy, before we go, is there anything else you want to share about what you're up to? Anything at all?
I have a new keynote that I'm rolling out called Who Do You Think You Are? And it is designed to send this message of the power we have to change our thoughts and our experiences. So if anyone's looking for a speaker for a conference, to get people to create a transformational experience, shoot me an email, a DM, whatever. But I want to also thank you, John, because I always appreciate these conversations with you. And I would urge anybody who has some interesting insights to share on leadership to reach out to you, because this is a fun conversation.
Absolutely.
And you can find me on my website, nancyrberger.com. I'm sure it will be in the
I'll share everything that on how to get in touch with Nancy. Nancy, thank you for sitting down for this conversation.
Thank you, John.
You're the best. And if there's anything that I might have missed, there's so much to cover. And this is hard for me to limit this to 30 minutes, because this could have gone on for another 2 hours. But I'm trying. 30-minute mod. So if there's anything that I should have asked, let me know. I'll reach out to Nancy, see what kind of insights, guidance, wisdom, information I can get. In the meantime, thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Thank you for subscribing. And I'll talk to you soon. Take care. Bye.